to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is Nancy Ross. Nancy is a licensed clinical social worker whose interest has always been in helping couples and families realize their goals of healthier family dynamics. Her company is Bauer, Shepard, and Ross and Associates. As both a mediator and a psychotherapist, she works with individuals and families throughout their entire life cycle, including premarital and marital counseling, in helping them cope more effectively with life challenges. As a co-developer of a new approach to divorce, the collaborative team model, Nancy works as a divorce coach to help couples and their children face the difficult challenges of divorce. She is the co-author of Divorce, A Problem to be Solved, Not a Battle to be Fought, and numerous articles on divorce, and continues to train professionals in this model both nationally and internationally. Thank you so much for joining me, Nancy.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Okay. Today, Nancy and I are going to be talking about how a collaborative approach can help make divorce a less painful process. It's hard for us to think of divorce not being a painful process, but anyway, what is the difference between collaborative law and an interdisciplinary team collaborative divorce approach?
Other than being a mouthful, you
yeah,
mean?
that's a lot.
That's a lot. Well, collaborative law is the earlier term with just two lawyers agreeing not to go to court, which is revolutionary all by itself.
Yes.
The newer term, interdisciplinary collaborative practice, which is what we now call it, consists of a team approach, which is really the new part, the exciting part, as far as I'm concerned. That's where my love is because what happens is you get an expert in each field. If you think about it, divorce is financial, it's emotional, and it's legal. So by including a financial specialist, mental health professionals to address the emotional part, and lawyers to address the legal part, we've got our bases covered. And the clients benefit from having the expertise of these 3 or 4 individuals working together. And we'll talk more, I know, later about what they all do, but that's just the overview. The new concept is we're a team, we work together, we communicate, and that the clients are a part of that team, which is kind of new all by itself.
So it's we decided not to go to war, and instead we're going to try to talk through our issues.
We're going to try and talk through our issues, and I think the unique thing that because we have all 3 professionals, we can educate our clients about money issues. We can help them look into the future so that the decisions they make now are good decisions that hold in the future. We can have them look at their children and think about the needs of their children. And for me especially, I love that we can help them look at their co-parenting relationship because they're not ending a family. They're recreating a new family. It just takes a different form.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how did this whole collaborative approach get started?
It's really fascinating. And all it took was one man taking a risk. His name was Stu Webb. And around 1992 in Minneapolis, Stu had a case with a colleague. And Stu's a family lawyer. And as an aside, he's also a Zen Buddhist, which doesn't sound like most lawyers, I know, but it's really typical of a collaborative lawyer to have a spiritual grounding, so to speak. So Stu had kind of watched all the carnage in the courts and just felt really horrible about what was happening to children and families. It was really against his core values. So in this particular case, it happened to be the, quote, opposing counsel, which is legal term for who you're up against in the adversarial arena. I was a friend of his. So he called a friend and he said, would you be willing to do something really revolutionary with this family? And the friend agreed. and said, "What do you mean by that?" I'm sure, Stu, I trust you, but
Uh-huh.
Stu said, "Well, would you be willing to sign an agreement not to go to court, to still represent each of our clients to the best of our ability,
Mm-hmm.
but agree not to go to court, and that the clients can't go to court with us? In other words, we're not going to appear
Mm-hmm.
if your case doesn't work out." So he agreed, the colleague agreed,
Mm-hmm.
and the case was so successful that Stu decided that's how he wanted to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so he began training people, lawyers, how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And at first it was just an interesting concept,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody thought it would go anywhere.
Uh-huh.
And instead, it's now traveled all over the world. We have over 5,000 lawyers, financials, mental health in our organization of international organization, International Academy of Collaborative Professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And internationally, we are in almost 24 countries.
Wow.
So
That's quite a spread
it's
in a few
it's
years.
an amazing
Yeah.
spread, and it's spread, I think, because it meets the needs of families in today's world.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, part of the thing, of course, is that divorce has become like pervasive.
Yes.
For a while, and I don't know if it's still the case, but about half of marriages were ending in divorce.
Right, it's close
Yeah.
to that.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that the statistics now show that a larger number of people who've been married in midlife are divorcing. It's not just young people
Uh-huh.
whose marriages just didn't work out. But the divorce rate itself is sort of flattened out,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a rise in this kind of midlife crisis, if you will, of families looking around and saying, maybe I don't want to live the rest of my life in an unhappy relationship.
Right. How is collaborative approach different from mediation?
I am a mediator, and I love mediation. So I don't want anything that I say to sound as if I don't think it's a wonderful process. It is.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a lot in common.
Mm-hmm.
They both stay out of court. So these are private. Both of them are very private. It's really the clients driving the process, their decision making. And both in mediation and collaboration, it's the professionals who are facilitating, guiding them to decision. I think the main difference for me personally is when I'm mediating, I'll often see one of the people I'm working with, one of the couples, really need some extra coaching. And I have to sit on my hands. I can't do it. I have to be neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So as a mediator, I'm neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But in collaborative, I get to be that person's coach. So
Uh-huh.
one of the major differences, not the only difference, is that you get your private coaching. And that person is both your ally and your challenger. Challenger in the sense of, are you doing what's useful and productive and going to help you with your partner in the future? And it's an ally knowing you're supported, you're able to set your goals, you're able to have the luxury, if you will, of forming a relationship with your coach and having that person by your side at all the team meetings. It's also different in that we have a financial specialist, financial neutral. This has become huge because our financials actually facilitate our meetings. They're the information gatherers, but they're neutral. So they can actually help the couple learn and understand what's going on without the couple feeling like, well, that's the other side, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a powerful role, and it's been a very rewarding role for the couples and the financials. So that's one major difference.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is we have an advocate for the children called the child specialist. Although if it's a teenager, we call him a kid coach, because
Okay.
it just wouldn't go over too well. And that person is to keep the child out of the middle, to be able to give information to the parents about what their child is experiencing going through this divorce, because it's hard on children.
Okay.
And with this kind of support, we think children can become more resilient. And of course, we have the collaborative lawyers who actually keep the family system in mind, even though they're definitely representing one client and giving advice, which a mediator can't do, by the way. So you're getting advice from your lawyer and your coach are meeting together. You feel like you've got your team, and that gives you confidence and tools to be able to find your voice in the process. So that's one of the main differences. You've got all these professionals who are there helping you develop as you go. And mediation is great, but I'm there helping people come to a decision. I'm somewhat limited in what I can do as a neutral.
So if I'm listening to you a little bit, it sounds like this collaborative process, for one thing, it sounds like it may take more time because you're trying to establish, better communication and so forth.
Right.
Where in mediation, well, there is some of that that's going on, but it's pretty
Right.
directed to trying to
Right.
get to a conclusion really
Right.
in a kind of a short period of time.
That's an interesting question because sometimes in mediation, if you don't have the skills, it can drag out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to say, is one taking more time? I think what might take more time is we're trying to get everybody together to schedule them. So what we do is we become really efficient. In our first team meeting, we all have our calendars and we actually schedule out a roadmap for the entire process. Who's going to meet with whom, when they're going to meet, and approximately how many meetings we think we'll need. So it's very choreographed ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, with some people they may want more services.
Well, it sounds
So-
like again, it's more educational, if you
More
will, because of the
educational, right.
because of the coaching that's going on and so forth.
Right,
That you're trying to sort of educate the idea of bringing something out in somebody,
right.
bringing out an understanding and so forth. Where again, in mediation, it's more like again. At least when I've seen it, it's almost like a referee. I hate to say it that way, but it's you do still have the attorneys for each side. They're there.
Well, they're not always there. Sometimes
well,
you're just in the room by yourself with a client.
I haven't been
Yeah.
in that type of a
Right.
scenario, so that's just a different experience. So anyway, yeah, so that's really interesting to think about. How this process may be a little different, and how it may appeal to some people that are looking for a different way, of working
Yes.
through, a pretty serious problem.
I think people choose this process for so many different reasons, not always ones you'd think.
Mm-hmm.
For the reasons we hope they choose it is we hope they're choosing it because they really care about their family going forward, and they realize that maybe in their marriage what they did didn't work and they need to change something to make it better
Mm-hmm.
or healthier going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they choose it because of their children. They want a voice for their children. They want to understand their children. They want to get resources for their children. Sometimes they choose because they just realize that there's so much acrimony between them that if they don't learn some skills and ways to do it, it's going to be very costly.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, some people choose it for what I think probably is the wrong reason, to save money. Because you're buying services. Sometimes you may want to buy more services, more coaching, for example, or more times to learn about your money situation with the financial. So depending on what your needs are, it can cost more than what people originally think.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually go over all that initially so people know what to expect coming in. I think we're probably the only process that does that.
Okay. What is a divorce coach, and how is this different from a therapist?
Oh boy, that's a big question, and a lot of professionals get confused on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm a therapist, let's say you're my client.
Okay.
So we're going to look a little bit about your history. We're going to have you understand a little bit about maybe what the issues are. There's some luxury for you coming back next week. I'll give you homework. And we're going to be solution focused. We're going to, you're going to define your problem and I'm going to help you resolve that. but we have the luxury of time and some depth.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching is probably what you might imagine. We set your goal. We define what you're going to need to change or what you're going to need to do to reach your goal. Let's say it's better communications with your soon-to-be ex-spouse. So you want to reach that goal, and you're going to need some help with that. How do you not respond to triggers? How can you be more direct? How can you not create a lot of defensiveness in that person? So I'm very focused on what's going to help you be successful in your communications. But it's really toward making a decision. That's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
In therapy, there's no pressure to come up with a decision.
Mm-hmm.
In divorce, in collaborative and mediation, that's what the difference is. You have to agree at some point, or you're out of the process.
I see. So you talk a little bit about children getting a voice,
Yes.
and having a professional that's involved, helping out in that process. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit more and what it means, because a lot of times the children, well, they're the bone of contention in the middle, in a sense.
It's true.
You know, and so they're in a really tough spot. Each parent is looking for that child to take their side and so forth, and if they say anything understanding for the other parent, it's like, you must be against me because you're not for me.
That's right.
So,
what a horrible thing to do to our children, and yet divorce is pictured as two parents with two sides.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, they feel like each one has a side, but that hurts children more than anything because they're part of each parent. So, the child specialist, as we call it, is a licensed clinician who's had many years of practice and training with children.
Mm-hmm.
And in a very short period of time, and sometimes even 1 or 2 meetings, so it's not therapy,
Yes.
can help the children with questions like, what is this like for you? What are your worries as your parents go through this divorce? How do you want your parents to understand what you're going through? So these are neutral questions. They don't lead the children, but through play and through just making a connection with the child, the story kind of unfolds, and then it's not confidential, so the children can be able to tell their parents exactly what they need to hear.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have a phone in here, folks. Sorry.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes.
Okay. So we've got sounds like a cast of thousands, not really a cast of thousands, but we have a lot of professionals that are involved in this.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, so that sounds really expensive. I mean, the lawyers are expensive all by themselves, but then we bring these other professionals involved. So how does this all work?
The way of cost. How does it work?
Yeah.
Well, when we designed it, we thought about cost.
Yeah.
Because you're right. When you first hear it, you think, I can't even afford the 2 lawyers, so how could I afford all the rest of you? So the way it's designed is the lawyers actually have, especially I'd say the first 3/4 of the process, a fairly minimal role. Because they're the financial, who's neutral, and one person, not 2 lawyers,
Right.
is gathering data. So
Uh-huh.
that's cost saving.
Mhm.
And that financial is an expert at doing this. They do it all the time. They know how to look. They know how to analyze quickly and efficiently. They know how to educate the clients so that they're not holding back because they don't understand. So that saves money. We, as coaches, handle in meetings with the clients their emotions, their communications. So when you talk about what drives up the cost of divorce, it's usually emotions. It's rarely what really people are dividing. It's the emotions around how do we split time with our children, our very precious children? How do we give up time? How do I get time? So it's emotional. It's emotional about even when you come to things like support, about what's fair, and nobody can agree on what's fair. So when you address education, you get a couple that's really educated, understands what they're doing all along the way. Their emotional lability, as we call it, the reactivity, is dampened down. They can communicate. It doesn't take us a really long time with most couples to get through this. So it's a very focused, time-effective, cost-effective, and emotion-effective process.
So one of the things that I think, I'm not really an expert at all in this, but you have the experience. But I think one of the things that leads to divorce is an awful lot is that spouses aren't really hearing each other.
True. True.
Okay, so we go through this collaborative process, and suddenly people are hearing each other. So do you ever have it happen that the people sort of reestablish connections, and they decide, maybe we don't really need to go through with this, and maybe you could give us some sort of an idea if it does happen. How often does that happen? Is it, like 10%, something? I don't know.
It's probably more like 5%.
Okay.
And I always tell people, though it can happen, and they will get to that place, almost everybody does, where there's a lot of sadness and regret.
Yes.
If we knew now, then what we know now, we wouldn't be doing this. At best, they can say, we'll be better parents.
Yes.
But the regrets are that they didn't find it sooner. And yes, we do have people who do reunite, and now with tools, and we send them off to therapists because we don't do that. That's not our role in this model. But we give them resources, and from the feedback I've had, it's been very successful. The thing I have to tell people is when you come in, one partner usually wants it and the other one doesn't, almost invariably. And some people are just blindsided.
Yes.
So they're really new to this, and of course they don't want their marriages to end.
Right.
So I have to be clear around that question to be able to say, you have signed up for a divorce. You are going to be getting a divorce. Even though it could happen, it's not very common. So treat this as if it's going to happen. And then one of the coaches will work very hard with the one who's ready to leave the marriage to slow them down a bit and understand and be more compassionate toward the one who's not quite ready. And the other coach will work with the one who's not quite ready to understand, to get through the fear, the apprehension, and just kind of a lot of the grief that goes with it.
Okay. So I understand that you also offer some public educational
We do.
programs?
Yes. On the third Saturday of every month from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, there is what we call divorce options. And it's not about collaborative per se. You'd think that we would do that as kind of like, okay, that's in our best interest. We don't believe that. We believe it is a public service and that we need to give people all their options. So there are 4 basic options. You can do it yourself. You can go to court. You can, as you mentioned earlier, have a mediator do it. Or you can choose a team process with collaborative team. And we do the pluses and minuses. We look at money spent on each, and then how it might fit the individual family needs, and then they choose. But it's done in a very neutral, very educative way. And there's usually a financial and a mental health and a lawyer who presents. They can get that information off our website of nocourt.org, or they can call me, Nancy Ross, at 408-973-1001, and I'll give them the information of where it's taking place.
Right. And like you said, there are collaborative, if you will, centers in cities all over the United States.
All
because
over
some
the
people,
United States.
this will be on the internet, so we do get people that watch this.
Yes.
Actually, we may even get people in other countries that watch it, so occasionally. Okay, well, we're getting to be close to the end here, so maybe I'd like you to just share some final thoughts with our viewers about this process?
Well, as I've come to know it, and I've been doing it now for 25 years, so while it's new to many people hearing about it, it's not new to us.
Mm-hmm.
What I've come to know is that working as a team, we can pretty much address almost any family problem, many that we didn't think we could. So we can help families who are coming into divorce who are pretty splintered, hurt, confused, and scared, emerge on the other side with much more of a connection and a vision of how they want their family to be. And to me, that's the greatest gift, that we're able to make that kind of difference for them and their children.
Well, I appreciate this development, or at least it's an alternative.
It's an alternative.
You know, because I think there's some people that emotionally, or whatever, they just can't deal with it, even the communication part. And
they can't, and
and
there's some
so-
people
and
that
so-
need to go to court,
Yeah.
that they really need a lawyer to represent them because they simply cannot sit in the same room together. Or
Yeah.
as you said, they're not going to be able to communicate. So no, they shouldn't. We try to do a very good screening process so that we make sure that people go where they're supposed to go, whether it's mediation or court, or even do it yourself with some support.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want people in collaborative who aren't going to be successful.
That's great. Nancy, I appreciate you coming so much. Thank you for being my
Thank
guest today.
you, Michael. Sorry about that phone that went off.
That's okay. Life goes on. Folks, here's another alternative. Actually, we have a lot of material on my website about divorce, and there's an attorney, Mark Erickson, that's provided a lot of material. He's an excellent lawyer. And so go to the website, financialinsiderweekly.com. If you know somebody that's going through a divorce, let them know. Nancy's interview will be online. And just look under past episodes. We'll see you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.